Indian equities start the week on a strong note. The Sensex and the Nifty gain 1% each, with 37 Nifty stocks closing in the green. Divi's Labs emerges as the top index gainer on Merck's oral COVID drug boost.
An oral drug which has a good antiviral efficacy is something that would be extremely useful and could be scaled up. So we're very, very encouraged.
We are very encouraged by Merck's announcement of an oral COVID drug, says WHO's chief scientist Dr. Soumya Swaminathan. Adds WHO will work with global regulators on the approval for the new drug. On Bharat Biotech's Covaxin, Dr. Swaminathan reiterates the decision will be taken in October. Tells CNBC-TV18 this is a procedural issue, not a judgmental one. Our apprehension around Z not calling an EGM has come true, says Investco's counsel Mukul Rohatgi, as the NCLT hears the matter again, urges the tribunal to appoint a retired judge of the High Court to chair the EGM. Banks favour an RBI-led DHFL-like resolution for the Kolkata-based financial services company Srei Group. Sources say lenders have sought the RBI's guidance on the issue. Srei Group says there's no question of IBC, as the company has submitted a debt realignment plan. India's coal crunch is severe, leaving 72 power projects with less than 3 days of stock as of the 1st of October. The coal ministry says it's working with power and railway ministries to increase daily dispatches and remove supply bottlenecks. Paytm's plan for its pre-Diwali IPO launch gathers momentum. Sources say the fintech major is likely to get the go-ahead from the market regulator SEBI this week. Adds that sovereign wealth funds and foreign institutional investors have shown strong interest in the IPO, valuing the company at up to $22 billion. That's an exclusive. Residential realty demand during July-September quarter rises 4% above the average quarterly sales seen in 2019, shows the Knight Frank report. CMI's Mahesh Vyas says employment numbers are now close to pre-pandemic levels. 300 Indians named in the Pandora Papers, the expose of offshore accounts of wealthy elites. The papers name Anil Ambani, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw's husband, and Sachin Tendulkar. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw says her husband's trust is bona fide and a legitimate trust.
You're entering the future-ready CNBC-TV18 EBIX Cash Studio.
Hello and welcome to the CNBC-TV18 Newsmakers. In focus today is pharmaceutical major Merck. The company's oral antiviral COVID-19 drug could reduce the chances of death from the virus by 50% and significantly reduce the chances of hospitalization for patients with mild or moderate COVID-19. Those results have emerged from an interim analysis done by the company on 775 patients. Of the patients who were given the pill twice a day for 5 days, only 7.3% were hospitalized and there were no deaths. The company will now be seeking approval in the US. If the approval comes through, this will become the first oral COVID-19 drug. My colleague Ekta Batra joins us now with more. Ekta, this could be the big breakthrough we've been waiting for.
Well, yes, US-based pharma company Merck, known as MSD outside US and Canada, has said their drug under investigation for COVID-19 Molnupiravir reduces hospitalizations and deaths by 50% for patients with mild or moderate COVID-19. The study was conducted on 775 adults for a month with mild to moderate COVID-19. The company said 7.3% of those that were given Molnupiravir, the drug under investigation, twice a day for 5 days were hospitalized and none had died by after 29 days after treatment. Compare this with the dummy pill group, of which 14.1% of those getting the dummy pill or the placebo were hospitalized and saw 8 deaths as well. Merck, in fact, was so confident of the results that they will seek an emergency approval for the COVID-19 drug as soon as possible. The US government, based on approval, has placed orders for 1.7 million courses and is shelling out $700 per course. If this drug is approved, then it will be the first pill which will be approved to cure COVID-19, which you can take at home. Till now, remember, the US regulators have approved only injections or IVs to help cure COVID-19. For example, remdesivir. These drugs have to be administered after the patient is hospitalized. In India, the Indian arm of Merck, known as MSD India, has signed up with 8 companies to sell Molnupiravir in the country. These companies are Sun, Aurobindo, Dr. Reddy's, Torrent, Cipla from the listed space, and the unlisted companies include Viatris, Emcure and Hetero. Hetero in July, in fact, approached the Indian drug regulator for an emergency nod based on data from their phase 3 drug of the data. The other companies are expected to be conducting their trials in India, after which they will apply for approval. Additionally, Divi's Labs is MSD's authorized manufacturer for Molnupiravir API. Finally, it seems as though there is light at the end of the tunnel. Besides Merck, companies such as Roche and Atia Pharma too are busy finding an easier cure for COVID-19, which will then allow you to treat it at home. Think swine flu and Tamiflu. So while 2021 was the year of the vaccine, 2022, it seems, might just be the year for the cure for COVID-19.
Ekta, many thanks for joining us. I spoke with Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, the Chief Scientist of the World Health Organization, and she believes the data from Merck on this new drug is an encouraging development, and that if there is enough evidence of the benefits of the oral drug, guidelines for it will be developed by the WHO. There's encouraging news in terms of COVID numbers as well. According to Dr. Swaminathan, the number of global cases have been declining now for 5 straight weeks. Only some regions continue to see a high caseload, and Africa continues to see deaths. Let's hear out what Dr. Swaminathan has to say.
What we've been seeing is that for the 4th or 5th straight week, global decline in cases and a decline in weekly deaths. So last year, I think last week, we saw something like 3.3 million new cases and 55,000 deaths globally. And this is, as I said, been on a decline. Now, this is, of course, very encouraging. And it's probably reflects also the increase in vaccination programs around the world. But it also hides, when you look at global numbers, it of course hides the details. And there are parts of the world, there are countries, there are some countries in Africa, still some countries in Southeast Asia region and in Latin America that continue to see very, very high rates. An oral drug which has a good antiviral efficacy is something that would be extremely useful and could be scaled up. So we're very, very encouraged. If there's enough evidence of benefit over risk, then there will be a process of developing the guideline. Meanwhile, of course, the company will probably submit their dossier to other regulatory agencies around the world. So the WHO department that does the pre-qualification and emergency use listing also works with regulators around the world. So on both sides, on the development of the guideline and on the regulatory authorization, we will work in parallel to make it happen as soon as possible. So SAGE is meeting this week to make the policy recommendation, but that will not be released till the emergency use listing process is also completed, which I hope will happen in the next couple of weeks. And then both of those will be released together, because there's no point having a policy recommendation and not having the regulatory approval. But hopefully October is going to be the month that this happens. Covaxin has an adjuvant that's been used for the first time, I believe, in a vaccine. So when there's a novelty, a novel product, there is all the more care. And so I think it's a procedural thing. It's not a judgmental thing about one vaccine taking than the other. Things are looking up for COVAX, in the sense that we see many more doses of vaccines now coming in after a very lean period over the summer months. COVAX also welcomes the decision of the government of India to start exporting vaccines. And we know that there are more in the pipeline, apart from the Covishield vaccine from Serum Institute. The Covavax, which is a Novavax vaccine, is also being manufactured there. We have the BioE vaccine. Of course, we still need to see data from their phase 3 trials. We have the Genova mRNA vaccine. So India potentially can be is already a big global supplier and will continue to be.
Well, that's Dr. Soumya Swaminathan of the WHO on a whole host of issues, including the breakthrough that we have seen from Merck. Joining us now to take that conversation forward is Rehan, the MD of Merck Sharp and Dome India, to discuss more on the oral COVID drug, likely to be the first that gets approval, and its plans for India. Rehan, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV18. Clearly, this has everybody excited, world over. This is the big development and the big possible breakthrough. What should we expect in terms of the approval process here in India? What's the broad timeline that we're looking at?
Sure. First, thank you very much for inviting me. Yes, very exciting news. So let me tell you a little bit about what we have done with 8 local manufacturers. For the very first time, prior to the drug achieving regulatory approval, we have entered into non-exclusive voluntary licensing agreements with 8 different manufacturers, Indian generic manufacturers. These include Aurobindo, Cipla, Dr. Reddy's, MCure, Heterolabs, Sun, Torrent, and Viatris. And our goal is to help them facilitate availability of generic Molnupiravir here in India and over 100 low and middle income countries, following approvals or EUAs by local regulatory agencies. So as part of these agreements, our authorized partners in India have been engaged in local clinical trials to expedite access to Molnupiravir. For an update on the trials and the timings by our VL partners in India, you'll have to contact these companies. I can't really comment on that. But very exciting stuff, and we're hopeful that this goes forward positively.
I understand that you may not be able to comment on the specific trials. Hetero has done the trial or is in the process of submitting the data, we're given to understand. So will each of these 8 partners have to go through that process?
Some of the partners have partnered together, have banded together to conduct these trials, okay. and they can then go ahead and file these trials with DCGI.
Okay, can you give us a little more color on these non-exclusive agreements that have been inked with these 8 companies? You're saying that they will service not just India, but also global markets. So as and when the regulatory process is complete, the emergency use authorization comes in here in India, what then? Can you explain to us the next steps?
So once these products are approved locally in India and in the relevant market, then our partners can go ahead and launch in these markets. They'll be responsible for pricing these products, including for India. And so as soon as they have the approval, they can go ahead and launch it. We are supporting them in the best way possible, but we're not responsible for anything else beyond the upfront support, sharing our data, etc.
Okay, so it is up to these individual 8 companies on the launch, the pricing, etc. But any ballpark idea what kind of pricing we could be talking about here in India? I mean, we're talking about $700 per course for the US market. But any idea on what it could be priced like here in India?
Shireen, we are committed to providing timely access to Molnupiravir globally. If the product is authorized and approved, and we plan to implement a tiered pricing approach based on World Bank data that recognizes countries' relative ability to finance their health response to the pandemic. But currently, I can't really comment on specific pricing for any market, including India.
Okay, but it's $700, which is what the US pricing is. I mean, that is completely going to make it inaccessible, not just to markets here in India, but large parts of the world. So I would imagine that it will have to be significantly cheaper than that, wouldn't it?
Shireen, I think it's dependent on our 8 partners. So we're going to launch this in India. And once they have approval, they will launch at a local pricing. Certainly. But again, I can't really comment on this pricing or any pricing for any market.
Okay. Do we have visibility on the supply between these 8 generic manufacturers that you've tied up with?
So, I currently can't comment again on the supply that they are getting together, but we are supporting them in every way possible, both from a supply chain point of view. Obviously, you've just mentioned in your announcement about Divi's that's providing the API, and so that's all I can say really about what they're doing. Certainly, I'm sure they're getting ready.
Is Divi's also a non-exclusive agreement, or could there be other API suppliers as well?
Again, I can't really comment on that. Divi's is our key API supplier.
Okay, is the key API supplier. So, since there is a lot that you can't comment on, and we'll have to get the information from the 8 companies that you've partnered with, Rehan, let me ask you, just the process in terms of being able to get this drug out in the market, and it is, of course, it's the breakthrough that everybody's been waiting for, and we are now going to wait to see what the regulators have to say about this. But just take us through the process of being able to get to this point.
So let me tell you a little bit about the trial, the MOVA trial, which I think is the key trial. This was a global phase 3 randomized placebo-controlled double-blind multi-site study of non-hospitalized adult patients with lab-confirmed mild to moderate COVID-19. The actual trial was for 1,550 patients, but the interim analysis was for 775 patients, and this was stopped based on significantly positive data. This trial was done in 170 sites around the world. And let me tell you 2 pretty important aspects of the trial. One was that Molnupiravir significantly reduced the risk of hospitalization or death by approximately 50%. The second piece is no deaths were reported in patients who received Molnupiravir versus 8 deaths in patients who received the placebo. And based on these compelling interim efficacy results, an independent data monitoring committee, in partnership with the US FDA, recommended us to stop the trial, stop the further patient recruitment into the study due to these compelling results. And we plan to submit an EUA, an emergency use authorization, with the US FDA as soon as possible.
Right. Before I let you go, Rehan, and I know, again, you're constrained by your ability to give us further details here in India, but if you can take us through, you said that some of your partners have collaborated to conduct the trials, etc. Just broad timelines by when we could expect regulatory approval and broad timelines for the launch itself. Are we looking at the early part of 2022? Leave us with some idea of what we should expect.
Shirin, I really cannot comment on timelines on the trials that our partners are doing. So you're welcome to reach out to them, but I will tell you a couple of things. Number one, we have worked very closely with our partners to build global supply chains for our product and to facilitate the development of this very quality assured generic versions of Molnupiravir. And with these steps, we are working closely to build sufficient global supply chain of this quality assured product to meet orders across the world. But I can't really comment on timelines on when it will launch, when the trials will finish locally in India. For that, you'll have to reach out to our partners.
Rehan, many thanks for joining us here. Congratulations. We wish you the very best of luck. And we will, of course, check in with you as you hear more from the US FDA, where you are going to be seeking an emergency use authorization. Appreciate your time here on CNBC TV18. We'll slip into a break, but there's a lot more coming up. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a moment. Well, this is the big breaking story, a CNBC TV18 news break that is now confirmed. The RBI has superseded the boards of Srei Infra and Srei Equipment Finance and appointed an administrator. In fact, Ritu Singh, who broke that story, joins us now with the details. Ritu, this is exactly what you were reporting. It is now official and confirmed. Take us through the details.